Thanks, Isabel, for coming back. So today we're listening to the McCanns, and this is not statement analysis. We're just listening. And I think that the public's gut instincts when they listen to the McCanns, something like a bell, sometimes a bell turned on, and they were like, this doesn't sound right. It wasn't maybe something, it just, they got a feeling that they didn't believe them. You can see if you go through the YouTube videos and you look at the comments on their interviews, I was really shocked at how many people don't believe the McCanns.
Yeah, it's kind of like the ding, ding, ding moment. You're like, well, that doesn't seem right. Yes.
Yeah. And so let's start. So I think it's really important to just start when with the what do they know? So what does Kate McCann know? She says, I don't feel that Madeleine is dead, but she also tells a journalist, I know more than you do. So so they seem to have some kind of knowledge of, is she dead? What does she know? Right? How can she know more than a journalist?
And she wouldn't. I know more than you do. I was there. And it's like, when were you there? I was like, well, of course you were there. So that's not the only instance where Kate McCann or Gerry McCann put themselves in that place back again, and they say, those kind of odd things, like in the Spanish interview. And it's not very clear, but it's clear enough where Gerry says, the night we found her. Okay? And a lot of people say that's not what he says. To me, it is as clear as day. And because I understand both Spanish and Portuguese, I see the voiceover, it says something completely different, and I think that's where people get thrown off. But I honestly believe that that's what he said, and he caught himself. But then he cuts off. Now, for many years, I have tried to contact the TV station to, with no luck, because I would love to have that full interview exist. And to be honest, one day it will be released, because I know that a lot of interviews are being released now, and we're getting to hear, some of these bloopers that came out of the McCanns.
Right. And he does, and in that same interview, Gerry McCann does an interesting thing where he starts asking questions instead of answering it. Often if you ask someone, like, say, did you steal the wallet? And they answer, why would I do that? Well, I don't know why. That's not really an answer that you're asking, answering with a question. So he says, where is the child? Yeah. We are looking for that evidence. He says, where is the child again? What other explanation can explain why she's not here? Besides an abduction is what he's inferring, right? But
yes, exactly. He does this quite often. Like the interview where he said, if something happened to her in the apartment, why would that be our fault? Everything it's a question to an answer that, it's a question to a question. That just means he's evading the question. And, statement analysis will tell you that. When you don't answer directly, you're basically doing that.
Right.
When, in Australia, the Australian interview, when he was asked, Gerry, did you kill your daughter?
Uh-huh.
No, never. Why would we? How? Who? When? And he goes down this list of why would we kill her? Why would we do that? How would we have done it? And that just means he knows that answer, but he's not giving it that answer, and this is obviously from, just so much that we learned about true crime, about how criminals work. That Chris Watts, during that interview that's been made public inside the police headquarters, his interview, he does that a lot. He's like, well, why would I do that? Why?
Right.
Like, I don't know. You tell me.
And there is a similarity, and I also wanted to mention that neighbor who had the footage of Chris Watts loading. You can't see him loading the bodies, but you can see him loading something. into his
Yes.
truck. And the
Does he
neighbor,
take them?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And the neighbor says to law enforcement, he's not acting right. And then the law enforcement officer says to him, oh, but he's nervous, gives him, an excuse, but he's nervous. You could expect him to act nervous in a situation like this. And the neighbor knows that that's not right and says, but and he starts to list all his reasons. I relate to that neighbor so much
Yes.
in life. I've constantly argued with people that, with my gut instinct or listening that it's not right. Like, that is not right. You can make excuses for it, but I still, that gut feeling that it's, of my life experience.
Well, what do we have here? We have somebody's gut instinct, and we have a police officer that is doing his job. And his primary job is to make the criminal feel at ease. That cop was thinking exactly the same thing.
Right.
But that cop
Interesting.
didn't say that.
Interesting.
That cop
Good
has
point.
a job to do. His job is not to start having him clam up. And you see that in the interview, how they're like, and we know this now. The police over and over tell criminals, you're not a suspect. No, we're not looking at you. Jared Fogle, they had a wire on him. Remember the subway guy? 10 years. The FBI had a wire on him.
Uh-huh.
And they kept saying, and then when his partner got arrested, oh, he's not a suspect. No, we're not looking at him. When they had been looking at him for 10 years. 10 years. It took them to build that case. And when U.S. Marshals was asked about it, and I believe this is what is happening in the Madeleine-McCann case, and the U.S. Marshals were asked about it, and they did their interview, they were like, how could you let him go on doing this and possibly abusing children for 10 years? And the U.S. Marshals said he had become so wealthy, so rich, that he could hire the best attorneys money could buy. And we knew that our case had to be perfect. There could not be holes that a top prosecutor could destroy. It had to be perfect, or we would have nothing. And I believe this is exactly what happened with McCann. Everybody knows. They hired the best.
Right.
They went and they hired the best. And they hired the best in Portugal, too, for their libel suit. So think about how bad their case is if they actually ended up losing to the detectives.
True.
So, yeah. And they hired Isabelle McFadden, who they hired for the libel case in Portugal. One of the best locations in Portugal, wealthy, well-known in, a lot of law groups and very well respected, but a lot of people feel that she basically destroyed her career by doing this for the McCann. She thought her ego, she thought she would win because of who she was, but she didn't. She lost. So it tells you how flimsy the McCann story really is.
Yeah, true. And also so back to the Gerry McCann interview where he was asked, did I kill my daughter? And gives this long, rambling answer. I think part of what he's saying is I'm not the kind of guy who would kill hide my daughter's body. I'm not I'm not a criminal. I'm an upstanding citizen, sort of playing the image game. But that answer did get cut before it got aired. Is that right?
Well, basically this is what happened in a lot of the interviews. Uh-huh. They have been edited. And it just makes me think, have the police asked for these unedited interviews of the McCanns? Because we know that in the beginning, there was Hanover, there's Bell Pottinger, these companies who got paid in the millions of dollars from the McCanns to protect them. So interviews, everything that they gave were so well guided, like the Australian interview, for example. We had seen that interview previously, but it was a tiny little clip of Gerry says, did you kill your daughter? No, never. We thought that was weird. Because it's like, what does that mean? No, never. What, you only killed her once? I mean, what does never? Uh-huh. Never is such an odd choice, but that's all we had. And then in 2013, I believe, or 2014, the whole interview comes back, and they released the whole answer. And it was like, oh my God. People were like, wait, where was it? Then the PR trolls that I discussed with Liz in my previous interview,
That's a great
they would
interview.
say, stop lying, that interview aired before. Well, it aired before. Of course it aired before. And then they would show a clip of the interview aired before, because they knew how damaging this was. But of course it wasn't the full clip. So people are like, well, no, that's not the full clip. They didn't air the full clip. So the McCanns, they basically have the best PR to defend them at the time. They would hire, psychologists who said, oh, no, we were not hired by the McCanns. By the way, I was contacted. They told me I could not be a troll because I use my name and my face and my pictures. So they're not after me. But if I could help them, they just want to know how it works, that the people that don't like the McCanns, how their minds work, because they were doing a study.
Uh-huh.
And I thought to myself, I'm really going to entertain this. And by the way, you're getting an exclusive right here.
Okay.
So I was contacted. So this gentleman was John Snow. He is a psychologist major, and I forget which university is now. It was, but I'll post that. And he started this study about the people that speak, not on people on the internet in general, just people who don't believe the McCanns. What an interesting study. And calling people trolls. When they indeed, I always say, Jerry, your people are the trolls. But so in this interview, so he has this woman, Andrea Culia, doing his dirty work. Mm-hmm. What I have on this woman is pretty amazing. So she contacts me and she's like, well, we have a study, people that don't use their real face and, and I said, well, I think in this case, some people are afraid, so they don't want to discuss the case because the McCanns sue everybody, and they've been so horrid that, just saying you don't believe them seems to be, a no-no. Mm-hmm. And she goes, she goes, well, what I'm doing is it's my dissertation. So she tells me she's working on her dissertation, and I have her in emails, direct messages telling me this. Uh-huh. So my goal here was to get those questions. And I said, oh, you're working on your dissertation. I said, well, maybe I can help you, and I really was like, oh, tell me what you got here. And I thought, you know what? I said, maybe some people might want to do this. And so she sends me these questions. Now, all of these questions were under the premise that this was a young woman working on her dissertation. Uh-huh. Months later, this study comes out. She's one of his associates.
What do you mean? One of whose associates?
The main PhD, the guy I just mentioned.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So John Snow. Okay. John Snow. And if you Google him, he did this big study on the McCann trolls, he calls them. Although when I think of McCann trolls, I think of, Rebecca and Maria Laverty and these women, that, desperately tweet for the McCann, now, day in, day out. But he kind of reversed that, and that was his study. But in the end, it was all a lie. And I have this woman on record telling me this was not a study. This was just her private dissertation.
So So was the purpose just to gather information to give to the McCanns?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it was really basically to try to destroy people who speak against the McCanns. So if you read this report, people that speak out against the McCanns are disturbed individuals. They have no jobs. They sit at home. This study is it's pretty hilarious because, as you know, I speak to so many people. I have judges, psychiatrists, journalists, police, FBI, people that I speak with on a regular basis that don't believe that their neighbors are now calling me,
Right. True.
Right. the McCanns live in a pretty nice town. I don't think that their neighbors are these types of people that they are discussing in this study.
So it's interesting. Anyway. That's a real technique that a lot of, I would say, PR for true crime cases use, which is don't listen to these critics of our narrative. They're terrible people. Instead of dealing with the issues one by one that this person is bringing up, this so-and-so terrible person. So it's much easier to say you're a troll, you're a terrible person, than talk about the dogs, to talk about, the rental car, the alerts, and any of the other evidence. Don't you think?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like, look over here, don't look over there. And that's, but we all know that these are just distraction tactics that they use. And, unfortunately, they use just, the bottom of the barrel people to do this for them. But exactly, but who else would do that other than people that are unscrupulous and, sometimes after money, after prospects, after promises. Look at Clarence Mitchell. Just disgusting individual. I mean, that is my personal opinion. He is like, this is the kind of person that you would never want in your home. I mean, it's like, what a dangerous man. He knew, in my opinion, exactly what he was doing. The lies, Jerry and Kate now believe that the intruder came in through the door and out the window. What kind of a grown person says something like that, except for somebody that knows what is happening, and they know that they've been caught lying because the window was not destroyed, and now they needed to give a reason for that window being open,
Right.
Just all of these little distractions.
Yeah, and they're also in Kate, the Kate and Jerry, the Ask the Dogs interview, where Jerry says flippantly, ask the dogs about the blood and cadaver dogs. Kate McCann says, well, I believe most people are inherently good. And what she's insinuating is that if you don't believe them, you're a bad person.
Yeah.
Good people believe us.
Only the people that believe us, it's like the criminals say, if you let me off, you're a good person, but if you don't, you're a bad person.
Yeah. And that should be anybody who doesn't want you to look at both sides before making a decision and only wants you to look at their side, should be a big red flag. A big red flag. Just believe them without any because we're good people. That's that should raise your eyebrows.
I have like one of the things that that brings me back to their interviews. It's this narcissism, and to me, in my opinion, and by the way, I have a few clinical psychologists that I speak with who are very interested in this because to them, Gerry McCann is the perfect example of a psychopath, and you would be amazed by how many people with credentials have actually mentioned this to me. They say it is so obvious, he has no feeling, and I can't really go into details, but somebody that knows the McCann, I don't know how much I can go into this without giving too much away, but somebody that is around the McCann. Gerry McCann, of course, as we know, has a missing daughter. Well, his other daughter needed to go somewhere, and he basically allowed her to go on her own somewhere.
Right.
This person contacted me.
This person thought was dangerous for the child. He let her. He didn't want to be bothered with going with her.
And this person was horrified that Gerry McCann was just allowing now his older daughter, who is 13, to just go alone to this particular place. I don't want to get too much into it, but the woman facilitated this because she felt
Right, she stepped in and parented the child.
Being like doing the right thing about being a parent. When the situation was over, the woman's own husband, but anyways, Gerry ignored the situation and let Emily on her own to do whatever she was going to do, and basically ignored the danger. And when the situation was over, the husband of the woman said there is no way that man had a child abducted.
Interesting.
And that was coming from a man. That is coming from a man. Can you believe that?
I can believe
somebody
that.
Who sees the McCanns regularly.
And that's a really interesting issue to bring up, because they constantly defend their decision to leave these children alone and to do checks instead of using the services or the babysitters provided at that resort. And he says, Gerry McCann says, we thought that that was the best thing, meaning leaving the children alone. And it seemed to work absolutely fine. We didn't have any problems right until the Thursday morning when Madeleine said, "Why didn't you come when we cried that night?" We thought, that's odd. Now, first of all, if that doesn't remind you of the joke where the doctor says the operation was a success, but the patient died, I don't know what will. Because, you don't say, when you lose a kid, it didn't work perfectly fine. Somehow those other nights where nothing happened don't seem like such a success when you leave Portugal without your child.
Yep. How was that a success? Not only that, but this is, again, the thing that the McCanns got caught in. Everything was perfectly fine. They were doing a great job, and it was so safe that within an hour after Madeleine's disappearing, Gerry McCann is heard on the phone telling this narrative back home that there were pedophiles running around. So how was it safe to leave Madeleine and the twins alone, but then an hour, who did he speak with? I thought he was busy searching for his daughter. Who did he speak with that he knew that there were pedophile rings? There's no pedophile rings anywhere. No child has ever gone missing from Portugal under the same circumstances. Yes, children go missing. A parent takes the child out of the country, but the police chief will tell you, a case like Madeleine, never before and never after. Never before and never after. It is a mystery.
Right.
And the reason why it's a mystery is because their story isn't true. It is too far-fetched to think that a random person comes into the rarest thing, which is an abduction from a bedroom, in a place where the parents say that they're up and around, checking everything 50 minutes. And then if you see witnesses, the witness upstairs, they've come home just at 9:50. They never saw anything. So there's people around in a resort where there's a restaurant, but Madeleine is abducted. No, it never happened.
So, yeah, and they also seem to contradict themselves about their parenting. Kate McCann says, I don't feel we were irresponsible. I feel we were very responsible parents. And she says we've become totally protective parents. But to Oprah, she talks about that she answers that question saying she's not overprotective, that she has found a balance. So which is it?
And did you see Oprah's look?
Yeah.
Oprah is standing as far away from her as she can. You know how Oprah, I mean, you know her well, you worked for her all those years. Mm-hmm. But you know how Oprah usually leans in and she's so like, let me hear you. You know, what do you have to say?
Yes.
Oprah's body language was like, I am not buying any of this. And her questions were fantastic. I think those questions will be one day used. That is one thing that Oprah does know how to do, is to ask the right questions. And she did. Boy, she got them in there just saying some pretty interesting things.
Yeah, you can tell with interviews where she really either likes or feels a lot of empathy for the people she's interviewing. She does lean forward. She puts herself in their place. With the McCanns, there's a distance and sort of you can see her analyzing, and it's like she's looking at an alien, like the way their choices were so foreign to her, and what they're saying doesn't match their situation. They lost their child, but they're she's not getting a lot of emotion or sadness from them. She's just, she's getting a lot of lines about how they don't regret leaving their kids alone. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
And,
even I believe it was Jane Tanner, the Tapas, the McCanns, they said a lot of interesting things. Another thing, I believe it was Jane Tanner that was basically, saying, they're such good parents, like I didn't want them to be upset that I had seen the abductor. So I didn't tell them. I'm like, who puts this in writing? So the child is missing and you don't tell them that the child, that you saw the possible abductor because you don't want to upset them. These are the oddest things that are all on record. And, it's like somebody, takes your purse. And like, I'm not going to tell you who took your purse, even though I saw it, because I don't want you to be upset. I mean, if she would have immediately said somebody went that way, wouldn't all the men in the group go running that way? What did, like maybe something was wrong?
Like, go get that guy, right.
Nobody bothers to go, looking the way that Jane Tanner saw some man carrying, Madeleine, supposedly, which was later debunked. But these are the kinds of things that we have them mentioning that are just completely crazy, really. It's not something that's, that rings true.
Right, and about that bond. I mean, you're a parent, I'm not. And about that bond from mother to child. The fact that she didn't search is so telling. And just as a pet owner, if my cat went missing in Portugal, I'd be searching the streets all night. Just my cat with no bond at all.
Yes.
It really gives you an idea that there was something missing in that bond. And the way that Kate talks about Madeleine, she said, I just feel she was really good company. She was my little friend. She was just like my little friend, sort of all the time. Well, was she your friend? But sort of all the time? It can't, all the time means all the time, not, part of the time. Yep. So, I mean, it's just and your friend is a toddler? It's just very...
Your daughter is never your friend, even as they grow up.
Right.
I never want my daughter to think of me as her friend. I want her to think of me as her mother that she can tell everything to. That doesn't make you a friend. That doesn't make you a friend. That makes you a mother. It's perfectly okay to tell your children, like, you tell me everything. We play together. But my job is to be your mother. It's certainly not to be your friend. And that, again, those are just such odd word choices. And that's it. The torn genitals, in her book, the Madeleine on a slab. I mean, it's just, there's just so much in that book that is odd. Those things really stand out at you, and you just, it's hard to understand. But this is how it's a story, because none of it makes sense.
Right. And when you say my child was good company, that means like she was useful to me. She was good company. She kept me company. It even indicates even more that it was about what the child could give her. So also I found, just going back to the Oprah interview, because I really encourage people to watch that interview. It's quite amazing. Yes. But you remember when they bring up the progression, so they had a picture made of what Madeleine might look like now. And
Correct.
they say, well, if she came through the door, it would be like a day, not a day had passed. Did that strike you as odd? To me, if someone had, I'd be worried, what did this crazy pedophile do to my child? Would she be ever the same? What is she interested? She's grown up. Not a day had passed is like, my best friend, moved to somewhere and now they're back in the States and it's not like a day has passed.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
did
Everything
you
is
find
the
that
same.
odd?
We just keep going. Yeah.
Did you find that odd? Like she's been kidnapped, and we know that she'll be just fine, and it's like not a day had passed. Kidnapped by a pedophile.
They constantly say we believe that Madeleine has not been harmed, but yet they discuss her being in the hands of pedophiles.
Right.
So what is this? I don't mean to sound crude, but is the experience of being with a pedophile like a pleasant one where you're not harmed? Like none of this makes any sense to, normal thinking people. It just doesn't. It's just so congruent. It's just so, there's so many aspects in their conversation that don't make sense. They're complete opposites. They're with a pedophile, but they're fine. I think of my daughter in the hands of a pedophile, laying on a cold slab. I've watched plenty of true crimes. I don't see children on stone slabs. Where does that come from? Also, these are the things that Kate McCann has said that it's just like, not even maybe in a horror movie we've heard of, cold marble slabs, stone slabs, but where do these ideas come from? Was she embellishing for her book? Is she, it's just such an odd conversation. You would not want to. She also, in the book, she explained that this book was written for her daughter when she comes back, so her daughter would know her truth.
Her version of the truth. Her version of the truth.
Her version of the truth. Shouldn't her version of the truth just be the truth?
There's only one.
Whoa.
There's only one truth, I always say. Yeah. Right. You can't have versions of the truth. And she also refers to Madeleine in the past tense. She says she was really attached to Cuddle Cat.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess you could nitpick.
That,
yes.
I think there was Fiona in her statement. She talks about her kids are, and Sean and Emily are, and Madeleine was, in the same sentence.
Interesting.
So all of the kids, yes, and you can see it in on my Twitter. That's quite a popular tweet, and people still retweet it to this day because it's very in the same sentence. She knows Madeleine is gone. She knows Madeleine is gone. Her children are, the twins are, Madeleine was.
Yeah.
That was it. Kate McCann also, when she did the run, she's like, I know what I'm doing here does not help Madeleine. Then why are you doing it? Why are you wearing a T-shirt? Yes. So this was a run where she's wearing or a bike run, I forget now. But she's wearing the T-shirt and everything that's for Madeleine, to raise money for Madeleine. And she says, oh, I know this will not help Madeleine.
Odd.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're like, no, it's not. Nothing can help Madeleine. It's just so heartbreaking, like, when I think about this case, it's become like almost like an unreal cartoon, and I have almost every time, like, I have to sit back and like, this is a real little girl that went missing in the country I was born in the country I was a happy little child and was allowed to live and run around and be loved by my parents and my friends and my grandparents. And I just have a huge pain for Madeleine and what happened to her there, And people are like, well, I know if it happened in England, you probably wouldn't care. I'm like, do you blame me? I'm like, no, I got interested because of the closeness to me, to having a daughter the same age, to being Portuguese, And yeah, it's become, people also ask me, like, would you hate the McCanns? I don't hate the McCanns. I could care less about the McCanns. The McCanns don't even, their actions cross my mind. The McCanns themselves, I don't care enough about them to hate them. My goal is justice for their daughter. I don't care what the hell happens to them, to be very honest. Don't care. I want the truth to come out, and then I want the law to take care of them. So, to me, it's personal to Madeleine and where I come from, but it has nothing to do with McCann.
Right. I think every case there's your way into it, where there's different things that you relate to about the case that make it real. And for me, one of the things that stuck out is Kate's narcissism, where when she describes her daughter, I never get enough adjectives to really get her personality, besides the fact that she was loud and hyperactive, or a terror, or hard to manage. She said she was quite extraordinary, really. They use so many reallys and actuallys and in their language. But the other thing that we're running out of time, so I just wanted to bring up is that the McCanns always stress that this abductor had a small window of time, so that something bad could happen in a small window of time. Yet that somehow doesn't apply, that something bad could happen in a small window of time, when they talk about the checks. We were checking so often. Well, if you're telling me that something bad can happen in a small window of time, it doesn't matter how often you're checking, because if you're checking every, other than like every, 1 second or something like that, you know what I'm saying? 10 minutes, something bad could happen with a child. That is why, everyone seems to agree in the world that you watch your children, because something bad could happen at any minute. What are your thoughts on that contradiction?
Well, sure. Also, you have to take into consideration that Kate McCann said she knew that somebody was watching them, and that it was Madeleine's fault because her little outfit was so cute.
What?
She literally talks about, yes. She described that Madeleine was wearing that wonderful outfit, I'm paraphrasing, was wearing that darling outfit. She looked so beautiful in it. And that could have been it, that a pedophile or the person, the abductor, was thinking the same thing as her, that she looked so beautiful. So she's not blaming Madeleine and the outfit for looking so beautiful. That's what she said.
And the other interesting thing is she has so much anger for Amaral, but so much sympathy for the abductor.
Yes, she even said she forgives the abductor. She forgives the abductor, but she does not forgive the man that was in charge of looking for her child. And one of her donors personally told me that the reason he didn't go into specifics about the McCanns, neither did he ever say anything bad about the McCanns to me. But he did say, I felt Amaral was doing his job, and I did not want my money used to sue him. And I thought that's very admirable. And I knew then that this was a decent man who actually came to help at that time for the right reason. Because people were conned. And this is why so many of these actors and famous people distanced themselves later. You never heard of them, because at first it was even inferred that, what's her name? From the
J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling.
Yeah. Because, she used to live in Portugal. A lot of her books are based on Portugal because that's where she lived. She was married to a Portuguese man, and she lived in the town of Coimbra. In the library, a lot of the things were, based. So she knows, Portugal quite well because she lived in Portugal. But it just kept circulating that she had helped Kate McCann write the book. Well, what an endorsement. It turns out that none of this was true. None of this was true.
Was that book
You
ghost
know,
written? Do you know? I mean, it's hard to know, but are there rumors that Kate McCann's book was ghost written, or have you ever heard anything
no,
about that?
no. I mean, I don't think so. I'm sure. I mean, I don't even care how it was done.
Uh-huh.
She read her book before it was published, so to
Interesting.
authorize any of this, and it couldn't have been so much ghostwritten because this book reminds me of OJ. If I killed my wife, this was to fill in the holes of the problems that they ran against with the investigation. It was like all the lies they had told. They were trying to explain away the lies that they were told. Most people, when they read the book, they're like, oh, they think there's weird stuff in it, and they think it's narcissistic. They also are like, oh, they lost their daughter, blah, blah, blah. Now, somebody who knows the case, she is literally explaining away the things that they did wrong. And this is what this book is about. It's covering up for the alibi. But many people say, in the end, that book will come back to bite her, as it has, because, people now that discuss the case, and they compare all the things that have been said, crazy things. Like Gerry McCann in Vanity Fair had a friend that basically said he was just not a likable guy or something like that, And so the McCanns were just not these, loved people. There are people that came out and spoke against them, just like the Gaspars, who went straight to police, So I don't think if something happened to my children, I don't think would have one friend that would get up and go to police and say, that Isabelle, she was a strange person. She could have done this. I just, don't see it, and most people don't have that.
Right, not an acquaintance. These are friends. You know what I mean?
A friend.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a really good point. And didn't Gerry McCann go to school with a schoolmate say that he absolutely believes he found Gerry McCann very dark or creepy or...
Yes. That's in the Vanity Fair interview. But there's also an FBI, Scotland Yard or FBI, I don't know. There was maybe Scotland Yard, a retired officer who says, never in my life have I seen a case like this where it's being investigated, by the parents, not, he's like, everything that the McCanns have done, I advise against it, which was kind of what the Portuguese police were saying.
Interesting.
And they told, the look, the look, the eyes thing, the McCann says that they never even thought that she had it was a little speck. Yet they did a whole campaign on her eyes.
Right.
And did a logo. That they even asked Google to do her eyes and that did not work out. They had to ask Google.
Wow.
To do a logo.
Right.
Instead of Google with her eyes, with her ID set.
Right, which could put her at risk and maybe have Madeleine lose her eye. But he said, I feel like it was a good marketing ploy. And ploy, look up the word ploy. We're running out of time, but look up the word ploy in the dictionary, and I encourage you. It doesn't have positive connotations. Yeah. Isabelle... I'm sorry. Isabelle McFadden, you never disappoint. I always wish the time were longer. Such good information, such good stories, and I know my audience really appreciates it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Roberta. Bye. Bye.